Yes, well, welcome to the Cayman Islands.
Nestled in the blue western Caribbean south of Cuba, the Cayman Islands boast of being visited by 1 million tourists every year.
15.
It's big business for the 50 to 60,000 Caymanians living in this tiny British colony, but even bigger money runs through these golden sands. Amongst the tourists, lawyers and accountants for some of the world's biggest financial services companies quietly go about their work. Most are employed by shell companies based here in name only, controlling trillions of dollars from this small, sleepy island, making it one of the world's leading tax havens.
It's probably number 2 after Switzerland. The Cayman Islands Monetary Authority brags on its website that it has 10,000 collective investment schemes established in the entity, in the jurisdiction. No accounting requirements, no reporting requirements, no regulatory oversight.
Cayman politicians take offence to such claims. The island's highest elected official maintains that there is plenty of oversight.
We have continually stayed on the cutting edge of maintaining a transparent and accountable regime which is open to scrutiny.
But one thing is clear, there are no taxes, and huge multinationals from the US and around the world are taking full advantage. They've set up scores of subsidiary branches on the island, but most try to keep a low profile.
You've got to be careful. I'm just stopping to give you a bit of advice.
After threatening to have us arrested, this man, who identified himself as a property manager for the companies here, gave us an insight into the secretive nature of doing business in the Caymans.
Well, for us, you can see it's all commercial. It's all banking. All I'm doing is telling you, just be very careful. You're in a small country.
Perhaps he hadn't read this recent memo sent out by the Cayman Islands government. With media scrutiny on the rise, it warns firms to remain calm and pleasant with arriving journalists, keep eye contact with reporters, and not push away the camera. But the pressure is on. The world's top 20 industrialized nations are now making new demands on dozens of tax-free zones, from the Cayman Islands to Switzerland, for more transparency about the $7.3 trillion circulating the world, far from the clutches of their tax collectors.
Each year, the United States Treasury loses up to $100 billion in tax revenues from offshore tax abuses.
In the US, calls for greater oversight have become louder as America's economy falters, introducing a raft of proposals on Monday to try to close offshore tax loopholes. US President Barack Obama singled out the Cayman Islands for criticism.
On the campaign, I used to talk about the outrage of a building in the Cayman Islands that had over 12,000 businesses claim this building as their headquarters. And I've said before, either this is the largest building in the world or the largest tax scam in the world.
He was talking about this place, Ugland House on the outskirts of the Cayman capital Georgetown, the official address for thousands upon thousands of companies that exist largely as a mailbox, unless all of their employees could somehow be inside. Well, it's certainly not the biggest building in the world, so in Barack Obama's opinion, then this is the biggest tax scam in the world. Now, the people who run Ugland House wouldn't give us an interview, so we went across the street to their main rival to get an explanation of how the system works. James Bergstrom is a lawyer at a major Caymanian firm and works with bankers like Brazilian Eduardo da Silva. They say the reason for registering a company here isn't to avoid taxes.
So you'll get these numbers saying, you know, the Cayman Islands have, and it's anything from 60 to 80% of the sort of investment funds domiciled there around the world. There's not a dime of it here. The administrator may be in a different jurisdiction simply to reduce the speed and transaction charges.
In their opinion, calls for a crackdown from Washington could be more to do with political rhetoric than anything else.
I think there is a lack of understanding that what happens here is for purely commercial reasons that benefit, at the end of the day, the shareholders, the employees, the stakeholders on these corporations.
Complaints of double standards were given added weight in March when major American banks received waivers from Washington to set up a fund in the Caymans for channeling money back onshore to help stabilize America's economy. Some say it shows how embedded tax havens are in the financial system of the world's major economies, and even those lobbying Washington on behalf of the tax havens agree.
If you seek to extend United States taxation extraterritorially to those hedge funds sitting in the Cayman Islands, The logical conclusion is that the fund managers will move from New York, that US tax revenues will go down, not up.
The business climate may not have changed yet, but back in the Caymans they're preparing to weather a storm. On an island where financial services account for more than 50% of the economy, the real issue for many here is what will happen if business slowly drifts away.
I've been asking for 0.1% of every bit of money that flies over us overnight and comes back this way. Well, you know, please, let's have a little smell of that. Let's get a little crumb off the table.
For those who've made the most from the good life here in this corner of the Caribbean, now might seem like the time to turn to new horizons. But even if the sun does ultimately set on this offshore tax haven, the likelihood is it could be rising somewhere else sometime soon. Sebastian Walker, Al Jazeera, in Georgetown in the Cayman Islands.